All right, great. Welcome back, YouTube. So for 311 folks, you guys have a very special website called GitHub. And within that is our sort of master course template for 311. And this has a ton of folders. This is the prior semester stuff. This is going to be the stuff that we're going to work on tonight, the AWS S3 demo. And then this Dynamo API set, that's going to be what we're going to be working on ongoing long term. And naturally, syllabus and some of the larger resources that we need, like demo files, I believe the JavaScript worksheet, I think that's in here too. So I want to make sure this is all organized. But this AWS S3 demo, this is going to be the bulk of what we're going to talk about this evening. Now, you guys are already probably pretty good, and the students want me to do this, so I'm going to zoom on in. You guys are already pretty good about how JavaScript works, in that there's a lot of IDs that are happening inside of JavaScript. And the good thing about the ID is that if you can encode that item, this is going to be a button. And just to give you a little preview, it's not a very complex looking page. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to look like, I'm working on how to pan left and right here. So it's just going to be a simple page with a simple button. Choose a file, and it's going to grab a file from within your hard disk, and it's going to upload it to the cloud, and then it's going to give us a listing of all the stuff that we have currently in the cloud. And I can whip through this because you're on YouTube. And this is the folder where all the stuff is living. So you'll see this parity between the titles of objects here and then the actual listing of stuff right here, because we've filled up this Facebook folder on S3. So there's a couple of building blocks that come together to make this happen. So let's go on up to that upper tier, and let's go to the index document, which opens up to this, this page. And you can see there's a couple of very familiar things that are happening right here. Like, for example, we have an HTML document, we have a head and a title, the AWS for JavaScript sample app, and then we have a script source, which is going to be the Amazon JavaScript SDK, which is something you're going to get really good at. And when people know that you're skilled at the JS SDK, you're going to get some job offers, because the smartest companies are going in this direction quickly, because it's the most secure, it's the most scalable, and it's so much cheaper that all of those are good factors. People always want to be moving toward cheaper, more secure, more scalable. That's a very nice triad of features. Usually people say, well, you can have two of those three. You can't have scalability, affordability, and security. But we're going to say, no, the JavaScript in the browser is a perfect triad for those things. So again, AWS, JS SDK, you guys are going to be reading a lot of this website as we go. You're going to kind of rob all the content in this website for a little bit. It's very simple, it's very centralized, but there's not a lot of people out there who have very good examples on how it works. So I want to make us kind of a very exclusive place to kind of talk about how the JS SDK should work. So naturally, you also have this bucket, which is tremendous, and you also have the ability to host your website on air, virtually with no cost. So here's what this page is looking like. Now I could expose this page by inspecting these elements this way and looking through the head and then the body, and taking a look at, you can see the style has been loaded here, and kind of exposing, the HTML as it's been loaded. I could also take a look at it up on GitHub, which is kind of a nice place to look at it. So maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just kind of go through it like this. So already there's some familiarities. The HTML, the head, the title, the script, that's all okay. You guys can just use that as it sits. Now, if I were to ask you, hey, is that resource sitting locally on your web server? And where is that resource sitting? That's some JavaScript that you're going to use to write Amazon code with. Where is that sitting? Is that sitting within your hard disk right there? And you're kind of like, well, wait a second. The source code that we need to make JavaScript in the browser happening is actually located at SDK Amazon AWS.com, which is a real place. So for example, I think I could probably redirect there. Let's kind of go over there a little bit. Let's see what we find. That's a location, a URL, and it's really, it looks a whole lot like an S3 bucket to me. And they don't want us to get in there. There's a little bit of, resource control right there. But you guys get a hold of that JavaScript whenever this page loads, which should be pretty interesting. So if I go on over to the sample app, you realize that this, that cool URL is also right there. So that's a kind of a cool idea where you were using the internet as a big computer. So instead of putting the source code in your web server, up in your bucket, you can do that, but instead of doing that, you can put it somewhere else, and then as your page loads within your client's browser, they'll grab that voluminous SDK from elsewhere in a much more capable cloud than yours, though you're on Amazon too. It's going to load it from elsewhere, and it will compose that resource in one place. Now, that means that there's what's called a cross-origin compilation that's happening, so that your page is a product of source code that's traveling from some other corner of the internet, i.e. Oregon or somewhere else, and a composition of wherever your server is located. So really that should represent a conflict, because you can, the client's browser cannot certify either of those origins. So when content comes zooming at it from multiple locations and are coming from different origins, then that should throw a security problem from within the client's browser. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to resolve that cross-origin issue as we go forward. But it is kind of interesting that the internet is a big computer to you guys. It's a big hard disk, in honesty. And there are millions of places where JavaScript may reside that you care to use. But let me say this. You guys using Amazon Web Service as both a CDN and as a content delivery network and as a place for your source code to reside is kind of compelling. It's cheaper, easier, and in many ways, that would be the greatest place for you to download stuff. Now, just to back up a little bit, because we get to have a chance to talk in big terms here, Google also offers a CDN for jQuery and a lot of other open source languages. So one thing is that you can actually go over to Google and see what other important libraries are hosted right here at Google's CDN. Now, Angular, it's a very important framework. That you just include that script source and you'll download that to your browser. So that's a cool element right there. So now we finish up the head and we get into the body of it, and we have an input button which looks like this input button right there. And that's going to be of a type of file upload. So when you touch upon it, it's going to kind of open up your hard disk right here. That's kind of compelling. If you haven't seen that yet, that's an input of a type file. So just by saying type file, that gives access to your hard disk. It's kind of cool, on a read basis. You can't put anything there. You can just kind of select stuff, And then what we're going to do is we're going to call that the file chooser. Then we have a button that is going to be our uploader button, where it's going to say upload to S3. It's going to say upload to S3, and when we press it, it's going to grab the location of that file, and then hopefully that file will get uploaded to our cloud. Week 3 JavaScript. So that gets uploaded as well. So that's a nice way. And now let's just say this. The internet has so much to do with text and images. I mean, what would the internet be without those two critical elements? Really, the web used to be just text. Now, oh boy, now we have images on the internet, and now the web also has a lot of embedded, HTML5 encoded video as well. So that's a recent addition to the internet that makes it much more compelling. But what is the internet other than this composition of photographs and text, thoughtfully composed in the way of Facebook, for example? Look at this little tiny image of me right there. So I'm also going to have a div. And remember, a div is really nothing but an empty carton that may have some styling associated with it. And that's where my results are going to be. So you can see my results div. That's my results right there. So when I touch upon that, that's the text that we're going to print to the screen that's going to confirm that the upload took place as a way to kind of show off a little bit. But to me, I think it's really a cool example of how to connect to the Amazon cloud. And now also we're going to create a div there. It's called Facebook Root. Now Facebook Root is going to populate on its own. And Facebook wants us to create the Facebook Root div there because we're actually going to include a lot of styling information that's going to flow in straight from Facebook. So let me say this. I didn't code this. Facebook's going to put it there for you, which is going to be pretty cool. So I'm going to have a Facebook root that I place right here, and they're going to Facebook's going to fill that up with styling and other Java code. And let me say why. Facebook is this incredibly beneficent entity. I know Edward Snowden has kind of ruined the Facebook profile, but let's face it, Snowden was a Russian agent. Snowden was there to, the communists are always there to make you unhappy because you're the capitalist and their mission is to destroy you. Okay, so don't underestimate it. Their mission is to make you unhappy and feel bad about being capitalist. So Snowden went making you feel bad about being Americans. But let's face it, Facebook has provided so much cultural equity. It's just hard to estimate its benefit. And one of the things that it's done is it's provided, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, the Facebook SDK. And this is a little bit of code right here that is going to automatically embed itself in the Facebook div that's going to run the Facebook JavaScript SDK. And this little bit of code right here, you're not going to look very closely at that. But what it's going to, this very difficult, hard to decode bit of JavaScript here is going to find the Facebook root, and inside of it, it's going to place a lot of junk that you never even coded. And that will enable the Facebook login, which is kind of it's kind of an icon of the internet. So one thing I found is that I am not logged into Facebook. I'm currently logged into Facebook. I should probably log off. But when you guys run the sample application, it's going to ask you to log into Facebook. And it's going to be like, holy moly, here comes the Facebook code. Facebook is actually enabling you to run some JavaScript that they control on their CDN in your page that will initiate a Facebook authentication. Now, what's good about Facebook is Facebook offers third-party OAuth authentication. And OAuth is a very big deal because if you guys can make your own OAuth service, like those of you in infrastructure, you're probably going to be motivated to, let's make our own OAuth for all of Cal Poly. That would be a great project. So you could actually use your Cal Poly login to log into many different places. Frankly, you guys use that OAuth protocol when you log into your university, and that allows you to walk in between your email and your Blackboard and your Bronco Direct and maybe Lynda, and that shared authentication is a password that you use once, but it gets you around to different places inside of the Cal Poly cloud. Well, let's say this. Facebook has your username and password. If you're uncool enough to have a Facebook account. I know many of my students are like, I don't have a Facebook account. I'm like, you're awesome. You're the true tough guy. Like, you're the guy with putting out his cigar with the uncombed beard, you're the guy who has the cigar on campus. Forget all the roses. Here comes me with the cigar. Oh, and I don't have a Facebook account. I'm like, you're tougher than me. Your hardness, you're fully from the penitentiary. You're a man, in a feminist world. You refuse Facebook. But let's just say that Facebook is good for you as a developer because most of the world does, in fact, have a Facebook account. Newsflash. And after they log in, instead of coding your own authentication protocol, they can actually log in using the username and password they already have, thoughtlessly, that's already stored in their browser, to get into your site. That's cool because the moment that you get authentication through Facebook, you can walk through the Amazon cloud, right? And resources that you allocate through your Amazon account. So after this evening, you're already Amazon clouders, right? And now you're going to use Facebook to integrate with your Amazon cloud. That's pretty cool. Now, once you grow up a little bit and you get to be a mobile developer, you realize that you need both the Facebook cloud and the Amazon cloud and the Apple cloud to trigger notifications to your mobile apps. So you can go home at night and be like, wow, honey, I worked hard, man. Just pulling together all 3 clouds today, rustling up them clouds. You know, that's pretty studly. So you have 2 big clouds that you're integrating at this point. But what I'm saying is your JavaScript that you studied last time is putting you in a position to integrate the open authentication protocol via Facebook. Okay, so you're getting there. And hopefully with this YouTube, you know, you'll maybe watch it a little bit if your head is hurting. Maybe your brain, that headache is the sound of your brain expanding. It's the Hulk expanding. So that's why you got your Facebook root right there. Facebook is going to plant all their JavaScript inside of there and run their authentication protocol through it. It's pretty cool. So let's get started with what you're going to write. You have what's called an app ID, and you're going to get an account on developers.facebook.com. And you're going to get in there and you're going to be like, all right, add a new app. And you can add a new app that's a mobile app, an Android or a Facebook game or a website or, you know, an Apple. And you're going to go through the basic setup. And I've done that, so you know you'll do it too. And this is you guys. This is my 311 app right here. And here's my app ID. So I'm going to copy and paste that into my app ID variable. And then I'm going to have another thing that's called a role ARN. ARN stands for Amazon Resource Name. We talked a bit about it last time. That refers to a role which you're going to create in identity and access management inside of Amazon. And you'll do that for the first time. So you go in there and you're going to create a new role. And the name of your role is going to be, I call it mine the CSU 311 role. Right? So you're going to create a new role, CSU 311. And there are various policies that you're going to allow inside of this. And you guys are going to have homework time where you're going to have a step-by-step follow the bouncing ball lab in addition to this YouTube. Okay, in addition to the source code. So you need to repeat. You know what I'm saying? Like, be a martial arts person. Repeat, 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 and then repeat some more, and then repeat some more, and then you will master it because you will have repeated. Does that make sense? This is a working class community where we repeat stuff. Okay, so understand that if you don't get it the first time around, just play the video, do the homework, and then play the video again and do the homework again, and then you will become a cloud master. You know. So here's what the identity and access control policy says. It says you should be able to put an object into S3. You should be able to create a resource with your Facebook ID's name under your bucket. And then and you should be allowed to do these 2 things. And this is the language of the Amazon access control, you know, the ACL within Amazon. You should also be able to list all the stuff inside of your bucket for the purpose of this app. So this is the outcome of listing, you know, the stuff in the bucket. And we should also do that for everything inside of this particular asset. So we're going to create a little folder there that's the name of your Facebook ID. Now also, I was experimenting with a database called Simple Database, which I use a lot in my iOS app. I learned at the last minute that Simple Database is not ported for use on websites. It's not modernized. However, the Amazon DynamoDB is perfectly optimized for use on websites. And the reason why is because of certain HTTP headers that the Simple Database gives are not modernized for modern browsers. DynamoDB has very updated HTTP headers, so browsers understand the data as it's coming back from the DynamoDB. Now you guys have used MySQL, right, in your database classes. DynamoDB is going to be a little bit different. It's a NoSQL database. And the interesting thing about it is it's basically a big web server that communicates over JSON, and it delivers data very quickly. But frankly, we're using DynamoDB so that we can avoid a Linux or Windows server tier, so that we're going straight from the browser, avoiding the server farm, going straight to the cloud where the database is. So that Dynamo is a very special new modern resource. And we could not be doing serverless development without DynamoDB. So DynamoDB is a good buddy of ours, and you're going to become experienced, okay, in using Dynamo. So some of the freedoms that you want to ask for from Amazon is the ability to get items, to write items, to delete stuff, to get stuff, to put stuff, to write them, to query it, update them, to put stuff up there. And these are some generic freedoms that you're going to want to ask for from Dynamo. And then we're going to run our data against a table. My table is called website test. You may have other tables. Or you can just put asterisks. But I don't think you need to do asterisks. I think you can kind of limit, where people can put their data. And so with that, that's going to be what you're going to write in your policy. Now, when you make a policy, you're going to be able to edit it like with source code and just write and copy paste, and you'll be able to write in your, and you'll get good at that. We'll show you what to write. So that is the contents of the CSU 311 role. Now, if there's something a little bit off, you may need to go and investigate the role and get your role right. It will take experimentation. You will have failures. You will have times when it won't work, and you will need to go back and look over your work and compare it to the originals. And this is part of the developer's world. And your personality will change. It will make you smarter, tougher, bigger, richer. It'll make you different, dealing with this. But one thing I can't handle is I got to treat everybody equally, and I want to help you all. But before you call out for help, you have to solve the problem. You have to make an effort. I'm not in the business of going around and fixing your problems. It's just not going to be that way. There's no way I can treat everybody equally. Does that make sense? So if you're the leaky wheel or the squeaky wheel, we may not pay attention to you. You need to make an effort to fix your problems. Every problem that I've ever seen a student go down they've somehow fixed it. People come to me with bugs all day long. The best solution I have is when I don't go over and solve their problems. When I actually say, did you do this? Did you do that? Instead of me coming over and coding it for you, which is something that as I get older, I'm less and less inclined to do. Because I can't teach you if you're not actually doing it on your own. So the best thing is to ask folks around you and ask me questions instead of saying, oh, it doesn't work. Because my next question is, oh, I'm sorry. I wish nice things happened to you. I like you. You're a nice person. How are you today? I'm going to robotically give pleasantries and then encourage you to look back at your documentation and see what you missed, because you missed something. That is why it doesn't work, not because the cloud is broken. Okay, so that's just a piece of developer culture. Now the bucket name, you're going to get that right because your bucket name is, and we can go into S3 at this point. IM is the hard part. The rest will make a lot of sense, right? I promise you. So that's the name of my bucket, 311. It's going to be the name of the file I'm interested in. And then I'm also going to configure the region. There are various Amazon server factories over and across the world. They're in Brazil, they're in Tokyo, they're in Hong Kong, they're in Sao Paulo, they're in Silicon Valley, they're in Virginia, they're in Oregon. And there are a lot of subnumerary lesser edge locations as well. Amazon is all over the world. So you're going to configure the region. And you can see the S3 is kind of all over the world, but DynamoDB is in particular regions. So your user ID and then the bucket. For that bucket, we're going to create a new S3, and we're going to feed in these parameters. We're going to feed in the bucket name that you've already supplied, and then we're going to create a new variable called the file chooser, and we're going to get the file chooser by ID, right? You know what that means. So I'm going to go up there to File Chooser, and I'm going to get that element. And then for that button, I'm going to establish that, but using getElementById, which is the most important piece of JavaScript, I'm sure. Then my results are going to appear inside of the results div. And these are all things, File Chooser, Upload Button, and Results, that you've already established within the source of your page. So here's the results div, and here's the File Chooser, and here is the upload button. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add an event listener that's called, whenever somebody clicks on the button, go ahead and initiate an array that's associated with the files that get chosen. And if that file gets set, then set the contents of the results div to 0. You know, right now it's full of stuff. That's the results div. But initially set the results to nothing. And then go ahead, set a key related to your Facebook ID, and then use that key as well as the file type, and then set an ACL, and then go ahead and put that object up into your bucket. Throw it across the internet to your bucket, however big it is. Big, small, you know, image, PDF, doc, whatever. And then go ahead and put the results of that transfer, if it fails, inside of the results div right here, if it fails. And then otherwise, if it's cool, go ahead and list the objects. Now, list objects is a function that you yourself are going to define. And what you're going to say is list objects is something that's built in to an S3 bucket natively that you're naturally going to have within the JavaScript SDK, right? That you link to all the way up here. So by virtue of having the SDK, you now have the ability to list those objects. And that's just showing off the SDK. I don't necessarily know if you're going to do that with your clients, but that's just a way to show off that you are using the SDK and that you're printing the results of this to the results div using the inner HTML. And from here, you're basically done. All this stuff you're going to copy and paste from, you're going to get this from Facebook, or you can get it from me, from my example, and that you're just going to feed this template code right in. And what it's going to do is it's going to grab your app ID, and it's going to confirm that app ID with Facebook, and then it's going to associate a token gotten from Facebook. It's going to send that app ID and token back through the cloud. The cloud will use that as a way to certify that you are who you say you are. And because you authenticated to Facebook, we're going to let you walk through the Amazon cloud. And that's through some permissions that you're going to set back in Amazon. But that's the big 60,000 foot review, as fast as I can do it, right? But that is the end-to-end topic right there. And I believe we've covered the entirety of this. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like you to try to get this to work. And the way that I want you to get to work is I want you to do a little bit of homework related to AWS. So I'm going to assign you to read through this lab. And so it actually is going to have you configure what's called a cross-origin resource policy. And so that will take place here as you look at your properties. And you're going to look at your cores config, which will have, here, let's zoom on it. Come on, zoom. Oh, great. So you're gonna have a little bit of XML that's going to be associated with your bucket that will allow you to do get, put, post, and delete over HTTP. These are various HTTP headers that your bucket will accept, you know, outside, and that allows you to put things to your bucket. So that's going to be an important piece of your tutorial. They're going to give this to you. You're going to copy paste it. It's going to work. You're also going to be instructed on how to get over to Facebook and how to create your Facebook app. And then they're going to instruct you on how to work with IAM. So in the past, we've worked with various tutorial providers, like with Lynda. CSU has a big contract with Lynda. We want you to just rob all of Lynda's stuff. They have like 5-hour-long labs. Bless their heart. God bless Lynda. They're, with you guys, it may not take that long, but the important thing is to know what each of your steps are adding up to. So you're going to actually create a resource in IAM. You go in there and you create a role, and you're going to place this code inside the role, and you're going to follow these steps right here. It's pretty intricate, right? Like welcome to college, not kid stuff. And then your sample HTML, you're going to be ready to go to code the sample page. And you'll see here, this is the code that I've been discussing, without explanation. And then they'll be like, okay, upload it to your S3 bucket. And then there, you're going to be doing some serverless JavaScript. Big time stuff. Okay? And I think for our first project, we're just going to have you experimenting with working with data and files moving in and out of the cloud, and that will be the first assignment. That will be due somewhat time after week 4, maybe in about 2 weeks. We will in the next lecture. Yeah, today is a big enough mind dump, but we'll go through that. We don't want to just try to get your AWS S3 going, and that's a nice place to be right now, right? So your users can throw you stuff, whatever that is, like upload a picture for their profile or send a picture to their buddy. So